walk along the rocky coast of Alaska with the cold wind cutting through my jacket, the ocean stretching wide and steel blue beneath a low, overcast sky. I am here for a routine coastal check, stepping carefully over wet stones darkened by ice, my boots slipping slightly as waves crash and retreat. The shoreline looks empty at first, just seabirds circling and kelp tangled between rocks, and everything feels normal and quiet. I stop when I notice movement between two sharp rocks near the waterline, something small, struggling where the tide pushes in and out. I focus my eyes and see a sea otter pup, tiny and fragile, floating awkwardly at the surface. A thick, abandoned fishing net wraps tightly around the sea otter pup's body and neck, the coarse strands digging into wet fur and pulling the animal downward with every surge of icy water. The sea otter pup paddles weakly, its movements frantic and uncoordinated, its head barely staying above the freezing sea. I move closer, my breath visible in the cold air, and the danger becomes unmistakable. The fishing net is heavy with water and algae, anchored against the rocks, forcing the sea otter pup into an unnatural position. Each wave pushes the trapped animal under for a second too long, and when it surfaces again, it gasps, silently, exhausted and panicking. The sea otter pup's small chest strains as it fights to breathe, dark eyes wide, fixed on me as if tracking my movement. I stand still for a moment, watching the tide rise and fall, knowing the water temperature is near freezing and that time is slipping away. The sea otter pup keeps struggling, tugging against the net without understanding why it cannot escape. Its repeated efforts grow weaker, and the net tightens further with every pull. I feel the urgency build as the ocean continues its relentless motion, and the trapped sea otter pup remains right there, waiting, silently asking for help without making a sound. I step closer to the edge of the rocks, feeling the ground vibrate as heavier waves slam into the coast. The sea otter pup is still trapped in the abandoned fishing net, and the tide is clearly rising now. The icy water climbs higher along the rocks, flooding the narrow space where the pup struggles. I can see how each surge steals a little more strength from its small body, and I know the cold is draining it fast. I calculate the risks in seconds. The water temperature is deadly, the rocks are sharp, and the net is anchored firmly beneath the surface. If I slip, I could be pulled into the same freezing current. If I wait, the sea otter pup will lose the fight. The waves crash harder, and the net jerks violently, snapping the pup's body downward and then back up in cruel rhythm. I notice the pup's movements change. The frantic paddling becomes uneven, then slow. Its head dips under longer each time, and when it resurfaces, it barely lifts its face clear of the water. Foam washes over its eyes and nose, and its chest heaves with visible effort. I feel the pressure of time compressing, every second louder than the crashing sea. I scan the shoreline quickly, knowing I have limited options. The net is too thick to break by hand, and the current is too strong to fight without preparation. The rocks funnel the waves directly into the trapped animal, amplifying the danger. I realize that the next strong surge could pin the sea otter pup completely underwater. The wind howls across the coast, numbing my face, but my focus narrows to the small figure in the water. The sea otter pup drifts lower now, its body trembling uncontrollably, the net forcing its neck into an unnatural position. I can see hypothermia setting in, see how close this is to becoming irreversible. I take another step forward, feeling spray soak my gloves, knowing that hesitation is no longer an option. The ocean shows no mercy, the net does not loosen, and the sea otter pup is running out of air. The danger escalates with every wave, and I understand clearly that the next decision I make will determine whether this ends in loss or survival. I commit to the decision and move with purpose, lowering my center of gravity as I step onto a flatter rock closer to the water. The waves continue to surge, but I time my movements between them, watching the rhythm of the sea. The sea otter pup is still trapped in the fishing net, barely keeping its head above the icy surface, and I know I have only a narrow window to act. I pull a compact cutting tool from my jacket, my gloved fingers stiff from cold but steady. I test my footing again, feeling the slick stone beneath my boots, and lean forward just enough to reach the edge without losing balance. The net is thicker than it looked from a distance, layered and twisted, heavy with algae and water, and anchored firmly against the rocks. I wait for a brief lull between waves and extend my arm toward the sea otter pup. The pup reacts weakly, its body twitching as another surge lifts it and drops it back down. I adjust my angle, careful not to let the current pull me forward. I reach for the section of net closest to the pup's chest, knowing that cutting the wrong strand could make the situation worse. A wave crashes and forces me to pause, water slamming against the rocks and spraying my face. I hold my position, muscles burning, eyes locked on the net. When the water recedes slightly, I strike quickly, slicing into the taut fibers. The net resists at first, then begins to fray, strands snapping under pressure. The sea otter pup shifts as the tension changes, its body lifting a fraction higher in the water. I keep working, cutting carefully, piece by piece, fighting the pull of the tide and the limited reach of my arm. The pup's breathing remains shallow, but the net loosens just enough to give me hope. Another surge threatens to undo everything, and I brace myself, knowing that this moment decides the outcome. I focus completely on the task, ignoring the cold and the Releasing the sea otter pup from the net is the only way to stop the ocean from claiming it. The next wave hits with a force that knocks my boots against the slick rock, and I realize just how close the same sea otter pup is to being dragged under completely. Its soaked brown fur is plastered tight, tiny body trembling, eyes wide and glassy, and the partially cut green fishing net still wraps stubbornly around its neck. The water pulls it sideways and downward, pushing it closer to the jagged rocks below. Time feels compressed, every second stretching as if the ocean itself is against me. I lean forward, gripping the cutting tool tighter, balancing precariously on the wet stone, feeling the spray soak through my jacket and gloves. My heart races as I slice another thick strand of the net. The pup's movements are frantic, a sudden surge throwing it toward the submerged rocks. I freeze for a fraction of a second, seeing the animal's head dip under the water longer than it should, chest barely rising as it gasps for air. Another wave slams over the rocks, spinning the sea otter pup in the icy water. The partially loosened net tangles further, and I recognize the critical moment. One wrong move could push the pup under, or I could lose my balance and fall. I swallow my fear and focus on a single decision. Cut the fiber nearest to the pup's neck first. The tension is unbearable, a clash between precision and raw survival instinct. I strike quickly, and the strand snaps. The pup jerks violently, small flippers thrashing, eyes wide but catching a glimmer of relief. Another wave throws water into my face, forcing me to steady my footing, boots sliding slightly on wet stone. The pup is almost free now, but one last strand still constrains its movements, pulling its tiny body toward jagged rocks. I exhale, steadying my hand, and slice the final fiber. The net loosens completely, sliding off the pup's body and floating in the icy current. The sea otter pup paddles weakly but upward, chest heaving, flippers trembling, fur slick and clinging. I hold my position, wet and shivering, as the pup gains stability, lifting its head above water, free from the net at last. The adrenaline begins to ebb, replaced by a heavy, shivering relief. For the first time, I can see the pup fully. Small, drenched, exhausted, but alive. The water is still rough, but the threat has passed. My arms ache, body soaked and chilled, but my focus slowly shifts from the terror of moments ago to the fragile triumph before me. The sea otter pup paddles in place, catching its breath, eyes blinking, trembling from cold but alive. Every nerve relaxes slightly, the suspense finally breaking into a fragile victory. The sea otter pup floats in a calmer pool near the Alaskan rocky coast, small body trembling but free, soaked brown fur glistening under the wee gray light. The green fishing net lies harmlessly tangled on the jagged rocks nearby, no longer a threat. I kneel on the slippery stone, wet jacket clinging to my body, gloves dripping, watching the pup catch its breath, paddling slowly with small flipper movements. Relief floods through me, quiet and overwhelming. I scoop a small handful of icy seawater and carefully splash it gently near the pup, encouraging it to regain coordination. The pup paddles instinctively, flippers moving rhythmically, head rising and falling steadily. Its wide, dark eyes glance toward me briefly, a silent acknowledgement, before focusing on the water ahead. The stormy clouds above seem less menacing, and the waves, though still crashing, feel distant and controlled. The pup swims toward a slightly sheltered channel among the rocks, shivering but moving with growing confidence. I stand back on a stable stone, balancing carefully, watching every small movement, ensuring the pup is safe. The green fishing net remains behind, a reminder of danger now past. Each small paddle stroke looks stronger, and the pup begins to float upright more steadily, chest heaving with renewed life. I take a deep breath, feeling the cold wind slice across my wet face, but my focus is entirely on the pup. It dives briefly, then surfaces again, now fully free, moving toward the deeper water beyond the rocks. The pup's small flippers move with fluid, coordinated strokes, and its brown fur glistens in the pale light, droplets scattering as it rises and falls with each wave. Finally, the sea otter pup swims freely, small body, agile and alert, disappearing gradually among gentle waves and rock formations, but still visible enough to see it is safe. I remain on the rocky shore, soaking wet, jacket clinging, gloves dripping, eyes fixed on the pup until it moves beyond immediate danger. A sense of quiet triumph fills the air, the harsh environment no longer a threat. The camera lingers on the green fishing net, tangled harmlessly on the rocks, icy water swirling around it, before panning back to the calm Alaskan coastline. The sea otter pup surfaces one last time in the distance, fully recovered, paddling with confidence, small head raised, eyes alert and free. The adult human man remains silhouetted against the rocky shore, soaked but victorious, watching silently as the pup disappears into safety.